Good morning.
Good morning.
I tried to get this down to 5, but bear with me. It's going to be about 7 or 8. And it's amazing how it correlates to what Betty said. Anyway, 6 years ago, Bob V. was one of our members here at church and passed away from cancer. And Betty and Kim got up and said that he left behind a 9-year-old cat named Sparky who needed a home. So I took him home, and Sparky was a very sweet, gentle old fella. My kittens, when they were born, would treat him like a loving old uncle. But Sparky had some problems. He was extremely obese, which meant that he couldn't clean himself properly. And he also had another issue that he had the most amazing loss of fur I've ever seen in a cat. And I have to say that some of my duties around him was kind of repulsive, and I wouldn't pet him too often because I'd come away with a handful of, like a pad on my hand. And so I neglected him a little bit more, more than some of the others. But Sparky was a very spiritual cat. He had a pet psychic told me that he was like a Buddha boy. I called him that after that, because he would run around the planet and give his love and light to areas that were troubled. So anyway, you have to know that I've been very clairvoyant since I was as far back as I can recall. And as I get older, it becomes more and more clear and more accessible. And I have an agreement with my animals that if they leave, or if they need to do other things or make a transition, that they would come to me after the fact and let me know they're all right. And they all do. And so, anyway, Reverend Sandy came over to visit about a month ago or so, and when she got up to leave, Sparky literally blocked her from leaving. And I bent over to him and I said, "Sparky, do you need to tell her something before she goes?" And he looked at me and he goes, "Meow." And so she sat back down with him and she said, "He's saying it's his time, and that don't be surprised if he left and went out under a bush. It was his time to make the transition." That's the first time they've ever told me in advance what they're doing. So anyway, I said, "No, I told you I would take you when the time came." But the first week I didn't have the heart. I needed to say goodbye. The second week I had a very frightening mammogram experience, which turned out to be all right, but I was emotionally wasted. The third week was the Courtney fire, so 426 was closed. And so anyway, a few days before I actually did take him, Luis came over and he told me, he goes, "Oh, you've got to take him," because he had great arthritis and it was very difficult for him to walk. He was 15 years old. He'd lived to be quite old, and so it was just time. So I went ahead and took him that afternoon, which he was quite happy about, and and he pulled himself over to the edge of the table, and I thought he was going to jump, but he was relaxing from the tranquilizer. And he let me see through his eyes just for a split second that he was looking into the universe. I could see the night sky, the stars, and I knew he knew where he was going, and he was going home. So when we were on our way out, after it was over, they had a kitten there named Charlotte, who was on Sierra News Online. I hope the article's still there, but she was 5 weeks old and a little gray cat that had survived the Courtney fire. And her little whiskers were in little balls on the end of her face, and she had a big third-degree burn on the back of her leg. If it were my leg, it would have been my entire calf. But I thought, how appropriate that she would be up and ready to go and wanted to see where she was and what was on the other side of that box, and stuff. And I thought, how appropriate. Form into formless, back into form. Life is constantly moving and flowing and re-examining itself and reinventing itself. But on the way home, I asked Sparky, I said, "Sparky, why did you choose me? Why did you come to my house?" And he said, I came to teach you to love through the imperfections. That will be with me the rest of my life. He truly was a little Buddha boy. And so my message for you today is that, but also don't ever, you know, one of the things that Eckhart Tolle says, which I just think is so absolutely true. He said, I've known many Zen masters in my life, all of them cats. And my cats, and I'm not saying I've had this happen with my birds and other animals. I mean, with a moth, I had a friend come and she goes, why do you have pictures of a moth on your wall? And I said, because I rescued him and I had an epiphany that he was God too, because he fell asleep in the crook of my finger after an ordeal with the tile on my bathroom sink. And it was such an amazing experience for me that, and a oneness with this little tiny creature, that I put it on my wall to remind me that God comes in all forms. And so often we quickly dismiss the nudges, the bumps, the little raps that we get from Spirit all the time to remind us that we are His beloved. And you can say with me, I am the one. I am the beloved of God. And our animals and our friends and our nature are constantly reminding us that we are loved. Don't miss it. Thank you.